My name is Layla Luke, and I'm 35 years old. As I stood in the sun-dappled garden of my family's annual summer reunion, a sense of unease settled into my stomach. This was supposed to be a celebration, a time to reconnect with relatives, yet I felt on edge. Everyone was gathered around the long picnic tables, laughing and chattering, but all I could see was my sister, Eva, holding court at the center. Her voice rang out above the others, commanding attention with the ease of someone who knew she was adored. Eva Luke, my younger sister by 2 years, had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, a flawless social circle, and now a resoundingly successful career in tech. She was charismatic, charming, and had that innate ability to make people hang on her every word. I'd always been proud of her achievements until recently, when her ambition happened to trample right over mine. The family had gathered around Eva as she regaled them with tales of her latest professional conquest. My heart sank as she described the innovative project she was spearheading at her company, a project that had been entirely my idea. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to quell the rising tide of betrayal and anger. "Oh, Layla," Eva's mocking voice cut through my thoughts, pulling my attention back to her. "You should really start thinking more outside the box. Who knows, maybe you'll come up with something original one day." Her words were sugar-coated poison, a barb that seared the air with its cruelty. Laughter erupted around the table, the sound of it like nails scraping against a chalkboard. Eva's smug smile curled up at the corners, a cat toying with her prey. It was in that moment that the resolve settled into my bones. I would not let her get away with this. A family event was supposed to be a space for support and love, but for me, it became the battlefield where the seeds of conflict were sown. Eva's casual cruelty had cut deep, and I knew I couldn't let it fester. I had conceived the concept of that project months ago, an innovative app designed to streamline virtual team collaborations. It had been my brainchild, birthed from my own sweat and sleepless nights. And now, Eva was taking all the glory. Eva had made the first move, but this was just the beginning of a long and calculated war. I took a deep breath, silently strategizing my next steps. Eva's betrayal was a tangible target, and I could not afford to falter. My mind worked rapidly, assessing her Achilles heel, her pride. The first thing I needed was proof. I returned home from the reunion, my mind a whirlwind of plans. I meticulously gathered all the documents, emails, drafts, mind maps, anything that could irrefutably tie the app's conception to me. I stored everything securely in a digital vault, away from prying eyes. But Eva wasn't one to take things lying down. A few days later, I discovered she'd blocked me from accessing the servers at work, locking me out of the project entirely. She must have sensed my intentions. I felt the weight of panic pressing against my chest, but I forced it down, reminding myself that I had anticipated such a move. I delved into my second line of defense, a trusted ally. Rachel, my longtime friend and an impeccable coder, was all too willing to lend a hand. Together, we bypassed the barriers Eva had put up, retrieving data that proved the origin of the project was mine. In a daring move, we uploaded a backup of the files to a private server, just in case Eva attempted to erase my contributions from existence entirely. But Eva wasn't done. Her next attack came in the form of a whisper campaign. Suddenly, family and colleagues alike were treating me with an unfamiliar coldness, their opinions of me tainted by Eva's insidious rumors. She'd painted me as desperate and incompetent, a woman willing to latch onto her sister's success. I found myself struggling against the tide of gossip, but I refused to let it drown me. My mind raced with the next counterstrike. If Eva wanted to play dirty, I would show her that underestimation was her greatest error. I reached out to my contacts, subtly directing conversations towards my role in the project without explicit accusations, planting seeds of doubt about Eva's narrative. The tide began to shift. As whispers of my involvement in the app's creation grew louder, Eva's carefully constructed facade started to crack. Yet, she had one final, desperate maneuver, something I'd anticipated but hoped would never come to pass. In a shocking move, Eva filed a patent for the app in her name alone. This was a bold and risky gambit, one that could cost me everything if it succeeded. She was gambling it all on the hope that I would back down, but she'd forgotten the most critical rule of war: never underestimate your opponent. With a calm determination, I executed my final plan. Leveraging the evidence I had carefully collected, I filed a legal claim challenging Eva's patent. The meeting was scheduled for a week later, and I could feel the stakes pressing down on me like a tangible weight. This was the battle that would decide everything. The climax unfolded in the sterile setting of a lawyer's office, the air thick with anticipation. Family members filled the room, their faces a mix of curiosity and tension. Eva sat opposite me, her demeanor a brittle mask of confidence. She still believed she could control the narrative. As the proceedings began, my lawyer laid out the evidence with meticulous precision. Each piece of documentation was a nail in the coffin of Eva's deceit. The room was silent, the air electric with the gravity of what was unfolding. Eva tried to maintain her composure, but I could see the panic flickering in her eyes. She attempted to discredit my claims, but the weight of the evidence was insurmountable. Finally, it was my turn to speak. I stood, my gaze locking onto Eva's, every word deliberate and measured. You once told me to think outside the box, Eva, but here's the thing, I did, and that a box was always mine. You might have borrowed it for a while, but it was never yours to keep. The final takedown was a devastating verbal knockout, a mirror reflecting Eva's own cruelty back at her. Her mask shattered, leaving only the raw impact of her betrayal hanging in the air. The realization of her defeat was evident as I turned and made my way out of the room, my steps final and resolute. I had won, but it wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about reclaiming my narrative, my strength, and showing that no matter how ruthless the war, I would always stand my ground. In the end, Eva's ambition had been her undoing, and my resolve had been my salvation. And as I walked away from the battlefield, I knew one thing for certain. The victory was undeniably mine.